All right, so we got a handful of topics today, but the biggest thing of all is that there was a PlayStation State of Play yesterday. Because time of recording, it is Wednesday, the 25th of September. So, yesterday, on the 24th of September, we had a PlayStation State of Play rather than a PlayStation Showcase. Mostly third-party stuff. There was some first-party stuff. There's a bunch of different announcements. So, we can either do this just in the order that they appear on the PlayStation blog, or we can do them in the order that they actually appeared in the in the presentation. Do you have a preference on either one of those?
Either's fine.
All right, so I think we'll save the big one for the end because that was the big thing that was. It was the last thing in the presentation, but we'll talk about the rest of the stuff. All right, going to the very top here. So first thing we had was some Astrobot free DLC that's coming out. That's just basically adding stuff related to both Stellar Blade and Helldivers 2. So there's that coming out, and sometime this fall. We also had, as we talked about last week, the remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn was announced. Which is, if you already own the PS4 version, because there's no PS5 version of Horizon, it is just $10 for an upgrade. Same goes with PC. It's also just $10 to make the upgrade. And if you don't own one of those and you just want to get the remaster, it's $50, which isn't terrible, but it is what it is. We had the release date for Lego Horizon Adventures, which is November 14th. We had some what someone referred to as the remaster of the PlayStation 5 Pro presentation. So just basically kind of showing some more stuff with the PlayStation 5 Pro, some games specifically that hadn't previously been talked about that are going to be enhanced by it. Most of the stuff they'd already shown. Basically, I think the only thing that was really new in that selection was Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, which hopefully is still coming this year, but I'm guessing it is, because it's supposed to be they're supposed to have a playable demo at the Tokyo Game Show, which I think is going on right now, if I'm not mistaken. Then they also had a new collection of controllers and faceplates for the PS5, with a blue/purple one, a fully white one which is just like I guess more of a glossy white, and then a green one, which is like an emerald green. They announced the monthly games for PlayStation Plus, which includes WWE 2K24, Dead Space, and Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, which is a terrifying game. And if you played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, trust me on that. Okay. Then they also showed an expansion, like a full expansion for Alan Wake 2 called The Lake House, which is basically it's some type of crossover with Control, which really had me at first thinking that it was Control 2, and then I saw that it was just an expansion for Alan Wake 2. And so Anyway, I'll get into that later. There was Archage Chronicles, which is an action RPG, and I believe it's also an MMO. Dragon Age The Veilguard just showed off some more gameplay of that. Dynasty Warriors Origins, basically just another Dynasty Warriors game. Fantasian Neo Dimension, which we already knew about, the Hironobu Sakaguchi game that was previously exclusive to Apple Arcade and is coming to multiple platforms on December 5th. Then they showed off one of the PS1 inspired horror games that's coming. PS1 inspired indie horror games called Fear the Spotlight. It's coming out October 22nd. A new Fortnite controller, a game that's like a horror-ish, appears to be Dark Souls-like game called Hell Is Us. A Hitman VR game for PSVR 2. Remasters of Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 officially announced. A remastered collection of the 2 Lunar games from the PlayStation 1, both Silver Star Story and Eternal Blue complete. A new Metro game that's going to be a VR game for PSVR 2 coming on November 7th. Another trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds, which got its official release date of February 28th, 2025. Pal World being confirmed as coming to PlayStation 5. In fact, I think it already has dropped. It was a shadow drop yesterday. Stellar Blade is getting Nier Automata DLC. Then there's this claymation-based game called The Midnight Walk, which is coming to PS5 and PSVR 2 in spring 2025. Some DLC for Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge called Radical Reptiles. And I believe that's a paid DLC, probably. Then there is I'm not sure if it's free DLC. It's probably not, for Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, where they'll have Shadow with Keanu Reeves doing the voice. I'm guessing because it's a tie-in with the upcoming Sonic 3 movie. A game called Towers of Agaspa, which is an open-world adventure with exploration and so on and so forth. It was kind of janky, but it's an online multiplayer game. And then the final announcement was the next Ghost game, Ghost of Yotei. Coming, it is from Sucker Punch, of course, coming in 2025. So, there was a whole bunch of announcements. Give me some of your standouts. Or we'll just do one at a time, I guess, and go back and forth.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, one of the games that stood out to me, and this isn't necessarily because I had any sort of attachment to it, but was the Lunar Collection. Now, I never played the games on the PS1. In fact, this was actually, I think, maybe the first time I even heard of the games to begin with. But having those, I guess, 16 or the PS1 case, maybe it would be more like 32-bit. But having those pixel JRPGs is just phenomenal to me. So with that, I really, it really caught my attention, and I thought, oh, yeah. Which one's that? The first one or second one?
Second one.
Okay. So yeah, so it definitely looked great. Like I said, I never played it before, but it definitely looked very appealing to me, just because, it beautiful pixelated graphics, traditional JRPG combat, so it definitely looks good. And having the collection, and even though it wasn't stated in the trailer, it later was. I think it was Gung Ho, the publishing company, said that it is coming to the Switch and PC as well, and I think they're Gung Ho is handling the physical production, so I think for like the PlayStation and Switch, but coming to PC, so that's great. So I'll be picking up there when it comes out. One thing though, just on my personal taste though, is I don't know if this was the way in the original PS1 version. I mean, could be, could not be, but one thing if I have the option to, is possibly just disable the voiceover, just because for me personally, if I'm playing a pixelated game, it's weird having voices coming from the characters.
Yeah.
I'd rather just read the text. But yeah, definitely looks good to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the PS1 version does have voiceover, but it's been a really long time since I played, and I never actually finished it. My sister played and finished it though, and she was really big into it. Can't tell if I'm missing a disc or if it just is supposed. No, it's only 3 discs. But yeah, um, I do remember I played a bit of it. It was hard. It was a hard game. Or well, at least it was to me back then. I don't know if it would still be hard to me today. I'm guessing it probably would because most of those older JRPGs are pretty hard. But I'm not honestly that interested. Mostly just because I remember how much I struggled with playing the second one, and that's the only real reason. But I may consider still grabbing the physical for Switch because it's like, yeah, it's a collectible kind of thing. So potentially, we'll see. Yeah. So, first thing that stood out to me. So I think since it's near the top of the list anyway, talk about that Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. So I was actually surprised that from a visual standpoint, it does look a lot better than the original. Like, this wasn't like with Last of Us Part 2, where the difference was, you couldn't tell the difference, where it basically was no different. It really does look better. They didn't make Aloy look worse, which is great. They actually kind of made her look better, I think, for the most part. So that was good. The upgrade fee being only $10, I think is good. I'm glad that they're doing that. Will I be getting it? No. At least not. No, I mean, I don't have any plans to. If anything, I might consider it down the line just to see how it compares visually. But even then, it's just like it's a really hard sell because I don't think I'm actually going to replay this game. And plus, I know that it's probably with the improved visuals, the performance is going to be worse. Though I guess Nixus is handling the port, so that's good to know because they did a great job with Forbidden West. But even so, like I definitely would not pay full price for this, not a chance. And even if I get the remaster down the line, because of the fact that it's only $10 for the upgrade. I don't know. It would be a while before I would really consider that. So, yeah, that's what I would say about that one.
Now, a couple things I'm curious about with that. I guess one thing I would be wondering is, with the remaster, if you got the upgrade, or at least with the upgrade, because I feel like you probably could still buy it separately. What I was wondering is, would you still technically have access to the original version in addition to the remastered version? Like, if you wanted to say jump back,
I would assume so, but I'm not sure. Because I mean, like, I can't imagine they would just like take away your license for the original game. So I don't know. I mean, my guess is that probably they just realized that there's a lot of people who will not buy this unless they do this. This is the only way that they can get it, and they can sell it to new people. Sell the brand new $50 version to new people. But like, I don't know exactly how that works. Let me look and see. There's a separate blog post about this remaster. I will note that's coming out October 31st. So let's see what we got here. But of course, it is day and date on PC, which is So let's see here. Of course, Nixus is doing the remaster, which is great. So it's going to be a great port. In fact, it's not even a port. It's because the fact that they're. I mean, this being actually, I guess really all they did was they just took the original game and redid some stuff to it. So it's not actually like a remake. It's just a remaster. So. probably would just continue to use the same thing. But either way, the fact that Nixxes is involved is great because they did such a great job. Well, they've done a great job with every one of their ports, but let's see here. Yeah, 10 hours of re-recorded conversation, mocap, and countless graphical improvements that bring the game to the same visual fidelity as its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. And like the screenshot that they show, one of the screenshots they show here of Aloy, like she looks great. They legitimately made her look great. And I mean, I don't think she looked bad in the original. Obviously, the big thing here is going to be the mods, like for people who use mods, because they're probably not going to work with this. So there's that standpoint. But yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything additional. I mean, they added, you know, the haptic features from the DualSense for this version, which frankly they're all pretty gimmicky, and I've used the DualSense for Forbidden West, and it's largely very gimmicky. Has trophy support, of course, for the PC version with the PlayStation overlay. Has DLSS 3, of course, and FSR 3.1 with frame generation if you want to use that, which I wouldn't. Old saves will work, so you can bring your, if you've completed the game previously on PS4, PS5, or PC, you can take your old save and import it in, so that's great. That is very, very good. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't appear that the $10 upgrade fee would work with like GOG, but it does work with Steam and Epic, so that's very good. Owners of the game disc can still are still able to get this offer as well, so that's good. I mean, you do have to have your disc inserted each time to play the game, but that's typically the case when you're playing a disc-based game anyway. So, of course, unless of course you don't have, if you only have the digital edition of the PS5, you will not have the access to the upgrade offer. So, there is, I think that's, yeah, there's nothing further on that. So it's all pretty much standard. I mean, I think the fact that they are doing it for only $10 for the upgrade, that's pretty reasonable. Because it is definitely improved, and it's completely optional. Like, you'll get some of the bells and whistles, but it's not something where you're going to be missing anything other than some additional visual improvements. And some of those things might already, you know, be stuff you can just get free from mods anyway. So I'd say it's one of those things where you do it if you want to, and if you don't, you don't. And I probably won't, because I don't have any itch to go back and play Zero Dawn, especially because I still haven't finished Forbidden West. I do want to. So.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next game that stood out to you?
Well, partially, it seems interesting to me, but I'm not entirely certain if I'm sold on it, is the Hell Is Us. Because the idea of a first-person Souls-like is intriguing, but I just don't know how that translates properly, just because of having the first-person shooter aspect mixed with the Souls-like aspect. Just seems... I mean, experimenting with these types of different genres and blending them together is incredible, but I just don't know how that properly... how it's going to work in the execution. And one thing that, which I didn't initially notice at first, but then I saw something in a couple of comments, was that the character seems to move so much slower than the enemies do. And then once I actually saw that and I looked back, I thought, it does seem like the enemies do move a whole lot faster than you do, which, I mean, sure, to a degree, that does happen in Dark Souls games where enemies do move a whole lot faster than you do, but I guess in the first-person shooter, for the most part, I mean, sure, sometimes enemies do move faster than you in FPS games, but they do seem to move relatively around the same as you do. So I'm not certain how that handles there. Also, I I also need to go back because I thought I saw this on the Steam page that there was something mentioning about roguelike elements, which I'm not certain how I feel about that in a first-person shooter game. That's yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I'm intrigued by the game, the idea and the concept, but I just don't know how I feel about it in the execution. So it's gonna be something where I look at it some more in the future, see what happens and develops, and then I'll decide what happens from there if I want to get it or not.
Now, I'm wondering if maybe you're mixing it up with a different game because this one's not first person. This one's third person.
Wait. Oh gosh, I might be getting mixed up then. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, there was like that Metro game that was first person, of course, because the Metro games are first person. But no, Hell is Us is a third person action adventure game, and it does appear to be a Souls-like from just how it looks, but it could very well end up being as much of a Souls-like as Black Myth Wukong, where you don't have to worry about, you don't actually lose your gained experience or souls or anything like that, and the enemies leading to the boss are not as difficult, but the bosses themselves are difficult. So
okay, yeah, I'm very wondering what I mixed this up with.
This is definitely third person the whole time.
Yeah, I mixed this up with something, but I gotta figure out what
it
was. But
PlayStation blog for that, a separate blog post within their list, but there will be an exclusive YouTube premiere on Monday, September 30th at that is 11 a.m. Eastern time. So, and I mean, launches in 2025. Of course, as you mentioned, it's also coming to PC, which is fantastic because this is another one that was like, ooh, this looks cool. I like what I see, especially now that I've actually beaten a Souls game. So I feel like, okay, now I can actually be interested in the Souls-like games because I know now that I enjoy it. So yeah, Hell's Us, that was one of the ones that definitely stood out to me a lot, seeing that early on. Similarly, one of the ones that initially stood out to me that ultimately ended up losing me once I found out that it was an MMO was Archage Chronicles. That was another one that looked really cool. And I guess it's part of a series that already exists. So, but yeah, it is an MMO. I don't know how much of that you could do single player. I mean, I guess typically MMOs you really can do single player, but I'm a little unsure about it. It's also coming to PC, of course. I'll at least keep my eyes on it and see if it's something that interests me, but I don't want a game that has a lengthy, endless loop of stuff because Destiny already drew me in like that, and I just can't do that again. It's just too much. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about that, about how I initially was like, yeah, this seems pretty good, but then once I saw it was an MMO, I was just very disappointed just because
like,
that's not really my thing.
What was the next game that stood out to you?
So next game is something that we have actually talked about before, and that was also a rumor, and that is Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered. Definitely glad to have official confirmation that this game does exist rather than some random display at a random display saying, oh yeah, so Legacy of Kain 1 and 2 Remaster, possibly coming, possibly not, hee hee. But yeah, and so I'm definitely looking forward to this. And wait, did we even get a release date for this?
December 10th.
Okay, yeah, so that's not bad. And yeah, and this was done by Aspire, who I believe also did the Tomb Raider collection, which also was a pretty good remaster with the work they did there. So, and I heard that they also did Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which I think also was a good remaster as well. So this should be good. Having that type of original classic game, but also having it graphically enhanced for modern, and also the controls should also be updated as well. So
yeah,
that's definitely great. I'm looking forward to this. Like I said, I don't think I played the original games. I know that at one point I got the at least the second game, and then also Blood Omen. But at some point they removed the original Legacy of Kain 1, and that was before I bought it, and I was like, bummer. But now I get to play it.
Yep. And it does let you switch between classic visuals and the updated visuals. They do say that they fixed the controls, so you actually have good camera controls, and since the original was based more off of using the D-pad when it came out, they fixed it so that you can use the joystick for movement, which is great.
Yes.
And I guess the original version didn't have a Y-axis for the camera because they just didn't really have. Well, and they didn't give any robust skyboxes, as they put it, because you couldn't look up. So they made some, and hey, that's great. But yes, I am very excited about this. I mean, obviously, we knew it was coming a while ago. I'm just glad it finally got announced. The one thing that I'm wondering about is whether or not they're going to have a physical version. I mean, I would assume they will, but I haven't found them yet. And I'm trying to see if there's anything in here that actually says whether or not you can buy it physical, because I mean, my problem is that I want to get it physical on Switch, even though I have a feeling it's going to be 30 frames per second, because of course it would be. But of course I'm definitely planning to get it on Steam. And if it's like a limited run thing where I have to wait longer, I may end up doing a comparison where I just do like Steam Deck. I might even do Steam Deck versus Steam Deck on that. Do the remaster versus like the Dreamcast or the PS1 version. That could be really interesting, because I do have, I used to have the Dreamcast version. I might try to I probably will just end up grabbing finding the PS1 version, because like I have the PS1 version on my Vita, or at least I used to. I'm not sure if it's still there because of the issues I had with all that. And now, of course, I can't transfer anything from my PS3 until I figure out how to get it modded. But it would be interesting to see how it is in DuckStation versus the remaster. Like, what are the differences? Because, I mean, obviously, like, the graphical improvements won't be there in DuckStation. But you can get the HD resolution, you can get, the better textures and everything. It just won't look as good otherwise, but it could be interesting to just do that comparison, Steam Deck versus Steam Deck. Because really, you're just wanting to see what the difference is in terms of the visuals. Of course, well, it's not so much the difference between the original and everything, it's the difference between this is what you can do through PS1 emulation versus this is what you can do, versus this is what they did with the official version, official remaster. So that part could be really interesting. But anyway, I agree wholeheartedly on that one, and that is going to be a day one purchase for me. I just hope they do a physical version and that it doesn't take forever for them to do it. All right. As far as the next one that stood out to me, let me find my spot in here. I'm not even going to say anything about Dragon Age the Veilguard, except that some of the recent stuff that came out about it made it go from something that I was like, this doesn't look bad, to like, I'm not touching this game with a 10-foot pole. You you insert the message, you went too far. They went way too far with it, and it's like, no, I will not support this garbage. I don't care. Even if the game is fun, I am not touching this. Just like with Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, I am not going to touch the game because I'm not okay with that. So anyway, but talking about games that do something that did interest me, and that is, of course, the DLC for Alan Wake 2, The Lake House, with it going back to the setting of Alan Wake and involving Control, the Federal Bureau of Control specifically, which is, the bureau that Control is based in. And it's just like, oh man, the story in that game is so good. It's so good. It's just like, oh man, I love everything about this game. And, even though, obviously I haven't played Alan Wake 2. I'm waiting to see if they ever bring it to Steam, which, God willing, I hope they do in the future. But even if they don't, it's going to take a while for me to get through the other Remedyverse games anyway. So by the time I get through all the Remedyverse games, they may finally release Alan Wake 2 on Steam. And, I'm all in on this. Just obviously not right now. I have to wait. And it's fine because I don't have enough time to play the games I have, so I can wait. But yeah.
Yeah, that definitely was a very interesting reveal. And it definitely reminded me that I still need to go. Well, not even go. I have to start Control in the first place because I bought that at least a year or so ago. And I just still haven't played it. Now, granted, I have never played Alan Wake 1 before either. Right. I still need to get to that. And also the other game that Remedy made, Quantum Break. Mm-hmm. That's another of their games I need to get into. And actually,
Max Payne. There's...
Well, I'm trying to remember. I don't even think I own the Max Payne games. Which, so I actually got a question for you based on what you've played so far. Do you have a recommended game that I should start in this Remedy-verse?
Well, I think it depends on what your tolerance is for jank. Because the controls for Alan Wake have some jank to them. I should say maybe less the controls, more the visuals. Because it very much looks like an early Xbox 360 game. Because that's what it is. It's an early Xbox 360 game. And it, some of the facial animations are just really, really bad. It's pretty short though. It's not a very long game, and of course, if you're not bothered by horror stuff, then it shouldn't even affect you. For me, I had to kind of I could only do one episode at a time because it was just some of the stuff is terrifying. But Control, as an overall package, is a better game. Just the controls are great, the visuals are great, the atmosphere, the story, just it's so interesting. And I know that you are way more picky about the Steam Deck performance than I am. I went for the 40 FPS mode, which it could maintain 40 pretty well, and occasionally would drop into the high 30s, but it wasn't bad. For me, it was fine, and I played the majority of the game on Steam Deck. I think if you mess with settings lowering the visual fidelity and stuff, you can probably get 60 on Steam Deck. I was never happy enough with it. I was I'd rather have a little bit better visuals and get a slightly worse frame rate just for that, because for me, it was I want something that's a good visual showcase for the Steam Deck, and at the same time is also something where I feel like the visuals aren't distracting. Because I have the options with PC. I'm not, if this was on Switch and not the streaming version, which is the only version that's currently on Switch, then yeah, you'd have to compromise because you don't have a choice. But on PC and on Steam Deck, I have the choice. So I'm going to go with what I want for this particular game, and it worked great. I loved everything I played about that game. I did not finish the DLC yet. Eventually, I want to go back to it and do that. But like some of the DLC is connected to Alan Wake, which just blew my mind when it happened. And I did all of that, but I didn't do some of the other DLC in its entirety yet. But yeah, so I would say Control. If you don't, if you can't handle the jank, then Control would be my recommendation. If you can handle the jank, I'd say Alan Wake first, and then from there, Control. The Max Payne games I haven't played yet, but I do have them. So eventually I want to go through those. I'm kind of thinking maybe next year a goal of mine will be to do a bunch of Remedyverse games because, I mean, I have the 3 Max Payne games. I have Quantum Break. Of course, I have Alan Wake, but I've already played that. Control, I just need to, finish up all the DLC. So, that Control's great on PC as well. Like, PC, I was getting high frame rates with ray tracing on. And, I mean, I ended up turning it off because it was just like, yeah, I could have the ray tracing on, but I'd rather have the extra performance. So, but that's me. So, granted, that was not in like open world environments because I mean, yes, the levels are open-ish, but it's not outside. You're basically just in a single building the whole time, but the building's like constantly, well, not constantly changing, but it has barriers, borders to it because it's just map sections and everything like that. So, but the map in that game is actually good too, even though it's all 2D overhead. Yeah. Anyway, I've said enough about Control. So, I finished that one on stream actually for one of my 24-hour streams. It was probably 2023. I think that was when I did it. Yeah, I think it was last Stack Up stream I did is when I finished up the story on that, and then just went from there and did other stuff. But yeah. All right, next game for you.
Well, I guess I guess it's not really that it's a big deal, but it was just something that sort of caught me by surprise, and so I'll just have this as sort of like a quick footnote, and that is just the Pal World ports of to PS5. That definitely surprised me a bit. I mean, granted, I thought there was discussions here or there between the devs about possibly having it ported to the PS5, but nothing really came out of that. But so like seeing it announced, and not only that, but also shadow dropped, was definitely a surprise. Now, one thing also I'll say is the Xbox version definitely, I don't know if it ever even partially caught up, but it definitely was behind a lot from the PC version. So I don't know how the PS version is going to be compared with the Xbox version and the PS5 version. Now, granted, Microsoft stepped in to help with development of the Xbox version since it was so far behind the PC version and there were much more bugs and stuff like that. So I'm interested in seeing how the PS5 version is going to perform. But yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. I was pretty sure I remember hearing that was going to be happening anyway. So from that standpoint, it's like, okay, great. I'm glad that it's over there. More people get to play the game, and you had positive things to say about it from the time that you spent playing it. So, like, great. I'm all in. I'm all for it. All right, I only have one game left on my list, so depending on if you have anything else you wanted to discuss, we can go over that first and then go to the last game, or...
I have nothing additional to that game, so, I mean, if you have anything else, you can definitely go ahead and...
Just the big reveal at the end. So we got the official announcement of what Sucker Punch has been working on, and it is a little game, called Ghost of Yotei. So, to be clear on this is not a direct sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. It's still in the same world as far as we know, based on the blog post that they did after the fact. This is actually set more than 300 years after Ghost of Tsushima, so it's a completely new person. We don't know about where Jin's story went after the end of Ghost of Tsushima. My guess is that probably we will get that later on. This could very well be, though they haven't stated it specifically, this could just be basically kind of like their Miles Morales, where it's a smaller game. Now, well, I guess maybe not necessarily as small as Miles Morales was, because that was a very short game, but more like this is and because this is taking place 300 years later in a separate area of Japan, with a different protagonist, obviously, because 300 years later. My guess is that probably they're going to do this, and then they'll do a Ghost of Tsushima 2 later on. But there are some things about this that make it a little... give me a bit of pause, and I'll talk about my thoughts on it specifically after you get a chance to say yours, but I do want to note very specifically, it is a female protagonist. The actress who is portraying this character, both in terms of motion capture, so her face is being used, her likeness is being used, and her voice is being used. This actress is very much an activist on a certain side of things, and definitely not really sure what this is going to mean for the story. I have plenty of thoughts, but I will let you go first.
Yeah, so this definitely, I would say, could be considered the highlights of the State of Play, and possibly the thing that, to a degree, saved the State of Play, because, I mean, not that the other games were bad, but I feel like if people were to rate it, they would probably say it was pretty mediocre, but I definitely think that this definitely helped out a lot. Definitely interesting to have not necessarily a side story, but I guess similar to what you said, having a Miles Morales type of game before having a full titled sequel. Mm-hmm. Also interesting to also have it set much years later, which definitely, I think, also based on what was shown in the trailer, might influence the gameplay as well. Mm-hmm. So like I'm definitely interested in, and initially when I was also watching the trailer, one of the locations I saw was like a snowy mountain. I was like, huh, interesting. We didn't have that in the first game that I remember. No, we actually did have sort of a snowy area that you could go to. But I'm partially wondering, based on what we saw in the trailer though, could that type of environment hamper your movement? So if that's something that, if you're in combat, will that hamper how the enemies move in reaction to you? Will that help you? That's just something that popped in my head, just a question I had. As returned, going back to sort of like another gameplay aspect, the character had a sort of like matchlock rifle, which makes sense because more years in the future, and that's that type of weapon is more developed and also being brought over to Japan as well. It's very intriguing to me, having that, especially based on, I mean, granted, you had other types of weapons as well in Ghost of Tsushima that weren't, necessarily a sword, but, I'm intrigued to see like how that is used, also in, like in the midst of combat as well. Granted, we didn't really see too much of gameplay. It was really more so just a CGI trailer, so can't really speculate or theorize too much about how the game's going to, or what the game's going to play like. But I'm definitely intrigued by it. Now, sort of similar to what you said before, the actress behind the main character is definitely interesting, to say the least. And I mean, I'm hoping this is a situation. I'm hoping this is a situation where she just says what she says, but she doesn't really have any direct impact on the story. Because, like, I will definitely say this: I'm not against playing as a female character.
Right.
I definitely think that's something that, should be said. Like, I mean, granted, I play Metroid. I think we definitely know I don't have a problem with playing as a female character. So I definitely don't have a problem here, but it's just a matter of how are they going to handle it? Like if like, because I mean, for one thing, also, like, I can't remember what her name is, but the I guess Thief from the first game, like, if you played as her, like, say for example, you had to, like, say if you had to, like, switch characters in the Ghost one, and you played as her.
Oh, you're talking about
I wouldn't necessarily.
Yuna.
Yes. If you played as her, like, I wouldn't mind because she has combat. It's already been established that she has combat experience, so I wouldn't mind that. So if it's something similar here in this game, I wouldn't mind it as well. But if they try to push some sort of message, or at least if the actress tries to push it, I don't know what I'll do. I mean, I think what I'll at least do is wait a while until the game comes out and see what happens sort of like early on, and see if there's any development there, and then based on that, make a decision if I want to get it or not. But I guess one thing also I am curious, because they didn't say, well, actually, yeah, they didn't say it at all. So I wonder when we could be getting a PC version, because I mean, I don't think we're gonna get this day one. No. So I'm thinking
Probably
like
not.
maybe a year. You think?
Year or two.
But,
Hard to say
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, God of War Ragnarok came out like a year and 2 months, or I'm sorry, a year and 10 months after it came to PS4 and PS5.
Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have on the game.
All right, so I'm going to start off first of all by saying I don't think that a female protagonist in and of itself is a bad thing. Not necessarily. Sucker Punch in general, like, I am a massive fan of their games. I think that they are, honestly, they're my favorite developer. I think that they have not made a bad game so far. But I mean, their gameplay, their storytelling, their graphics, just like everything about their games. Well, maybe not everything, but like their games aren't perfect, but they're excellent. And that's something that has been consistent. There has not been a single game they've made where I've thought it was a bad game. Now, I will say, like, Sly Cooper 3 was probably my least favorite of the 3 Sly Cooper games, but it was really just because they got rid of the collectibles for that game, which it's like, I love collectibles, so that's honestly the only thing that I really had a complaint about that game. As a complaint about that game. But they have done, like, they did a female protagonist for a side game, which was Infamous First Light, which was connected to Second Son. So they had the main character was the character Fetch, who was a side character in Infamous Second Son, voiced and modeled after Laura Bailey, who I've said positive things about in the past. I still think she's great. And that was stellar. Like, First Light was excellent. The only thing I didn't like about it was the fact that most of the trophies were tied to score, attack, arena things, which, while they made sense for the story, why there was the arena and all that, why, I mean, this training area for her is, like, made perfect sense. I don't like that type of gameplay, because even though the combat is great, and it does technically extend your ability to do that combat, I just hate the score attack stuff. That is not my kind of thing. I hate that. So that is the only Infamous game I did not do the platinum for, including the side game for Infamous 2 Festival of Blood, which I did do the platinum. Or, well, it doesn't actually have a platinum, but it does have 100% of the trophies. So, that aspect, and just how well they've handled characters in general in the past, gives me much more willingness to give them a chance. Because I think Sucker Punch has proven themselves over and over and over and over. However, what gives me pause, apart from the personality of, I mean, like the kind of stuff that the actress has said, is what we have seen with recent Sony games, where the first game will be relatively neutral in terms of its messaging, and then the second game, they'll go all in on the message. And that is what made Spider-Man 2 something that I will not play. Because they went all in. They doubled down on the thing that people hated, which was Mary Jane. They made her even more insufferable than she already was. Of course, they also made her less attractive, like way. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. It's just like, why did you do that? I mean, apart from it, now her outside appearance matching the inside appearance. But really, more than anything, it was they doubled down. They included more of her stealth missions. Where it's like, okay, that's one thing, but they made her so overpowered that she could take out the Venom symbiote enemies more easily than Miles and Peter. Which is stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all. She has like this electric stun gun thing that can take them out more easily than the two guys with superpowers. And Miles has like electric powers. And he couldn't take them out as easily as she could. That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, they ruined Peter's character. They completely emasculated him. And poor Miles. Like, I know you're not a fan of Miles Morales, and that's perfectly fine. I thought that the character was well written. He was very likable. Like, I loved Miles. I thought he was a great character. Regardless of, some of the messaging that they had in his game, which kind of just pushed things further. And then, of course, they just went full in with Spider-Man 2. But they ruined his character. And they made like Peter stay with this woman who's essentially abusive. I mean, like this nasty abusive woman, and then let Miles take over for him. And I don't have any problem with Miles taking over per se. I just think the reasoning didn't make any sense, because if they had actually killed off Peter, it would have made perfect sense. Having Miles be the new Spider-Man, 100%. But the problem is that they just, instead of killing him, they figuratively killed him by emasculating him and making him go off to start a climate change organization, because that's how he was going to save the world instead of, using his superpowers. It's like... So I'm worried that Sucker Punch is being influenced in the same way. And I think the big thing we're going to have to find out is if Sweet Baby is involved. That's going to be a big indicator that there's probably going to be something that we don't want to see here. And that concerns me. More than anything, it concerns me because Sucker Punch is basically my favorite developer. And they've made such great games, and I want to be able to enjoy this game when it comes to PC. But if they are going to do that with the story, if they're going to do this girl boss thing, especially if they decide that they're just going to like defame Jin 300 years after he's dead.
Oh gosh.
Then I will just be so mad that I won't even touch it. Now, my hope is that because of the various backlash, especially things related to Sweet Baby, that Sucker Punch has not had them influence the story in any way, shape, or form, that they are just going to continue to do the excellence that they've done so far. And then I'm totally fine with them having a female protagonist, having her able to take out enemies and everything. Like, yeah, there would definitely be, from a realistic standpoint, some challenges with her being a 90-pound woman fighting off big guys in armor. But the kind of guys that, I mean, if she's fighting off, typical Ronin who's really just wearing robes, it's like, okay, she has a sword, she has a musket. It makes sense that she could take him out. I mean, because that's less of a strength issue and it's more just having a sharp weapon and having a gun. And if that's what you're going to do, and the assassination stuff, like, I'm totally fine with that. I think that they could very well do an excellent story regardless of any of this, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove otherwise. One thing I will also say now, this actress, in terms of her out there, the stuff that she says, her tweets and all that, I am totally fine with separating the art from the artist, and I will give her the benefit of the doubt, or rather, I'm really just giving Sucker Punch the benefit of the doubt, because she's also voiced Anna Bray in Destiny 2, at least for most of the game, because like the beginning they had, I can't remember her name, it was like Jamie Chung, I believe was her name, who actually, if you remember that terrible Dragon Ball Evolution movie or whatever it was called, she played Chi-Chi in that. But anyway, this actress has voiced Anna Bray for most of the time that she's been in Destiny 2. And, regardless of the elements that Bungie themselves put in, she's never done any of this unhinged, weird stuff that she's says in her personal tweets on her Twitter. So, that being said, I think that it could very well be that she just does a great job in this role, and that I will be able to give her all the thumbs up possible and say, you did a great job with this role. I don't agree with you in many ways when it comes to real stuff, but I love what you did with this role, and this is a great game, and I will love it, and then I will look forward to the eventual return to Jin's story, because it is not done. And, I mean, it had a conclusion, but, well, I should say the story of Ghost of Tsushima with the Mongol invasion had a conclusion. But Jin's story itself is not concluded. And it's not like there was a cliffhanger, but they could easily do a lot more with his story. And the fact that they did make this big gap in between says to me that there will still be a future game where Jin actually has a follow-up story. And so yeah, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, and this is one situation where it is a plus for us that it's not coming to PC day one, because we have an opportunity to find out before it comes to PC whether or not it's going to be worthwhile to support. And if we find out that it is garbage, then we just won't support it. And if it turns out that it is as good as Ghost of Tsushima, just with a different character, set in a different time period, with some different mechanics because it's set 300 years later, then thumbs up. I'm all in. And I guess one thing I also want to note with this is that if they were smart, well, rather, if Sony was smart, I don't think this is so much a Sucker Punch issue, it's a Sony issue. If Sony was smart, they would just release it day and date, because, for one, they would get a whole lot of people buying it just because, well, I mean, they get some people who would buy it just because they want to support this idea of a day and date game. They'll get other people who will buy it because they love Sucker Punch games, or they love Ghost of Tsushima, and they'd buy it day one because of that, which would probably be me. And then they would also just get, there wouldn't be as much time for there to be any backlash before it drops. And I'm definitely someone who says, very much so, especially after what I've seen with God of War Ragnarok, that the backlash sometimes is completely overblown. Like, really, I mean, apart from what people dislike about what they did with the gameplay and with Kratos in general, which I think actually what they did with Kratos is completely consistent with his previously established character. It's just without so much of the rage, but the aspects of him being a family man who loves and cares for his family. I mean, it was being tricked into killing his wife and daughter, which is why he has that white appearance. It's because the ashes of his family is on his body permanently. It was that drove him to go and take revenge on all the Greek gods and murder the entire pantheon of Greek gods throughout the numerous games that they did before they did 2018. And of course, God of War 2018, not actually set in 2018, but set long after the events of the previous God of War games. Like, all this makes sense. Plus, I find Kratos is so relatable because it's like he recognizes everything. He knows what he did in the past, and he knows that while he doesn't necessarily regret it entirely, he does regret because it didn't bring him the peace he was looking for. But he did legitimately love his wife and daughter, and he was just enraged because of all the ways he had been deceived and used as a puppet for so many years to ultimately kill so many of these gods and so on and so forth. But anyway, so with God of War 2018 Ragnarok, I think that some of people's complaints, like, I don't think that they're illegitimate. The biggest reason why people separated from the gameplay changes, I think that God of War Ragnarok is so bad, without even having played it, is because of the fact that, number one, Sweet Baby was involved, but two, because they took a Norse mythological character who's supposed to be a giant, as well as any family members related to her, and they made him black. So they have the teenage, essentially teenage, giant, like last surviving giant other than Kratos' son, who's half giant because his mom was a giant. They have her as a black person. And Angerboda, like, I have no familiarity with the character prior to this, but being a Norse mythology, it makes sense. She would have probably been more like a pale white chick. And people were angry because they made her black. And it's like, okay, I get it. Sweet Baby stuff, it's dumb. But that is literally the only thing that I found in all of what I've gone through with the story that is quote-unquote woke. Everything else about the game, it's like, this is just good storytelling. And, like, the story is engaging. It has totally grabbed my attention again. And, like, I know some of the stuff that already happens, but it's like, okay, I'm refreshing my memory. Okay, these are the things that happen. These are all the reasons. This is why I'm like, wow, this is actually really good writing. So, anyway, I've ranted enough about that. Any other thoughts about anything with this topic? Or with any of the state of play stuff in general?
No, sir.